last election, it was all the gender stuff, the insistence that men can have babies and such. And now I fear that we like the terrorists is the new that. Liberals need to push back on the dumb ideas that come from their children. The Democrats' problem is the energy of the parties with the young and the young are with the terrorists. That's not good. So talk to your children and remind them, you don't really want to live like your heroes in Hamas. All the shit you do all day, it was all made in America. Your smartphone, your Grubhub, your freedom to bitch about America, that's all American stuff. You tell your phone you want a milkshake and a guy brings it to your house. Please, you couldn't survive a week living in Intifadaville.
Bill Maher just torched Bernie Sanders' fantasy of ever becoming president, and it was glorious. As 2028 approaches, Sanders' name keeps popping up as a potential Democratic frontrunner. But Maher isn't having it. He slammed, Bernie is too woke, too radical, and full of contradictions. On a recent HBO episode, Maher didn't hold back, listing off tough reasons why a Bernie ticket is dead on arrival. So if you're into no-holds-barred political takedowns, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let...
It was this week that the Supreme Court is looking at Biden's giveaway to people who own debt.
Giveaway is your term, not my term.
Well, they have college debt. Well, yeah. Okay, and we're going to give them money.
We're going to forgive debt.
Well, we're arguing about the same thing, but there's no argument. We're giving the money away. Okay, so I just want to read you this. And again, this is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying.
Now, we're going to get into the student loan debt forgiveness situation in just a bit. But first, take a look at Bill Maher's reaction when Bernie Sanders brought up the issue of terminology. Maher said the government was essentially giving away money to people who owed student loans. Sanders jumped in to clarify, saying the government was simply forgiving the debt. Different wording, same result. And that's exactly Maher's concern with the left, focusing heavily on language instead of addressing...
This is a survey student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are very likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money. Oh, I guess I just did, but...
Well, I mean, let me respond to that in two ways, Bill. You talk about giveaways. Under Trump, the Congress voted for $1 trillion in tax breaks for the richest people in this country and the largest corporations. That's a giveaway. We just increased military spending with very little discussion, I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too.
Yes, absolutely correct.
You could clearly see Bill Maher's impatience growing as the interview went on. The question was straightforward. When people are given free money, they sometimes spend it on wants rather than true necessities. Maher wanted Sanders' honest take, especially since he's known for challenging capitalism and advocating for socialist policies. Next voice for, and that's absolutely true. It's actually quite refreshing and honestly surprising that Sanders and I find common ground on this issue. If we're offering tax breaks and financial loopholes to the ultra-wealthy, then why can't we extend some form of relief to struggling students trying to build a future? This isn't about handing out freebies. It's about fairness and priorities.
That's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's
right?
Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism. That's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military industrial complexes. All right, but anyhow.
Right.
All right. So when you talk about giveaways, you have major corporations in this country that make billions in profit, don't pay a nickel in taxes. Billionaires have an effective tax rate lower than that of a truck driver or a nurse. You have a generation, you talk about this younger generation right now. I got around the country and I talked to a lot of people. You know, I don't know anything about that poll, but I can tell you, I've talked to nurses who are working their asses off, doing the right thing. They leave school $70,000 in that. They can't afford now to get married and have children. They can't afford the housing that they desperately need. So the truth is, you got a generation that, everything being equal, the younger generation will have a lower standard of living than their parents.
Students aren't asking for luxury. They're asking for a real chance at a decent life without being buried in debt from the start. The idea that we can subsidize billion-dollar corporations but not help the next generation get an education without a lifetime of financial burden is hard to justify. If improving the quality of life for hardworking young people is considered radical, then maybe the system is more broken than we want to admit. Sanders is right on this point, and it's one of the rare moments where his ideals line up with basic common sense.
At an AOC Bernie Sanders rally in Idaho last month, someone threw a Palestinian flag over an American flag, and the crowd erupted in approval. What should have happened after that is one of the adults on stage should have told their young, loyal followers, this is not a symbol of freedom. This is.
Aside from focusing on semantics, Bernie Sanders, who appears to be eyeing another run for the presidency, seems increasingly willing to echo whatever popular progressive talking point is trending. His silence on certain issues is telling. For instance, during the moment when the Palestinian flag was draped over the American flag, Sanders said nothing. This is a man who has spent decades in politics and should be well aware of the complexities and controversies surrounding the Palestinian leadership, including accusations of corruption, human rights concerns, and conflict-related actions. Yet, Sanders often frames the narrative as though one side is entirely innocent and the other entirely to blame. This kind of oversimplification reflects the broader confusion that has come to characterize certain.
The thought leaders in the Democratic Party keep encouraging and not rebuking the idea that America is cringe and the people who run Gaza are great. The Democrats are doomed. Alyssa Slotkin's right. Liberals are weak and woke, especially the white ones, and they indulge all sorts of nonsense from their kids, a pattern that then continues on in the Democratic Party.
Maher didn't hold back. He continued his sharp critique of the so-called thought leaders guiding the Democratic Party, with Bernie Sanders at the center of it. He warned that if Sanders and his ideological circle don't make a significant course correction, the Democratic Party could be heading toward political irrelevance. And he has a point. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking everyone agrees with you when you're surrounded by a small, like-minded echo chamber. But outside that bubble, voters are disengaging. That same disconnect played a role in Kamala Harris's struggles during the last election, mistaking social media approval for widespread public support. Maher worries the party is on track to repeat that mistake. If they don't adjust soon, they risk more than just losing elections. They risk losing touch and
Last election, it was all the gender stuff, the insistence that men can have babies and such, and now I fear that we like the terrorists is the new that. Liberals need to push back on the dumb ideas that come from their children. The Democrats' problem is the energy of the parties with the young and the younger with the terrorists. That's not good. So talk to your children and remind them, you don't really want to live like your heroes in Hamas. All the shit you do all day, it was all made in America. Your smartphone, your Grubhub, your freedom to bitch about America, that's all American stuff. You tell your phone you want a milkshake, and a guy brings it to your house. Please, you couldn't survive a week living in Intifadaville.
This right here is the kind of education Bernie Sanders and others in his camp should be offering to the younger generation. Because the ideas being promoted to them today aren't just misguided, they pose serious risks to the future of the United States. In their passion to fight for what they believe is justice, many young people are aligning with causes and groups that conflict with core American values. Sure, their activism might seem like a short-term win for Democrats, but it's only a matter of time before that same energy turns inward. That's the political reality few on the left want to acknowledge. Sanders, with all his influence and decades of experience, had a powerful opportunity to offer clarity, to show why, despite its flaws, America remains a model of freedom when compared to oppressive regimes, some
What do you think of the fact that the people who are getting the big crowds right now are AOC and Bernie Sanders? They're going around the country. Thank you, there's that same guy. I call him the always wrong guy. Okay, but I feel like, big crowds, again, the shiny object that the Democrats chase. It's not about the big crowds that come out to you when you're talking in a festival or wherever they are. I think it's because I think Bernie showed up at Coachella. That must have been fun for the fans. It's who shows up on Election Day. And I just don't see that's the ticket. I mean, Cory Booker, I know you've worked with him. I like Cory a lot from my home state of New Jersey. Made a speech for 25 hours. Again, just whacking each other off. This is just not what's going to get the job done.
Another major issue Bill Maher has highlighted with Sanders and the far left is political short-sightedness, the refusal to acknowledge their own missteps and make changes before it's too late. It's a risky combination of overconfidence and denial. Take the rumored AOC Bernie Sanders ticket. On paper, it might seem like a calculated move. A young Latina representing minorities and Gen Z, paired with an older white male symbolizing experience and the senior voter base. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's because the Democrats tried a similar formula with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And how did that end? With a disengaged base, a scattered message, and a campaign that struggled to gain momentum. The left keeps repackaging old strategies with new faces while ignoring the deeper problem. Optics alone won't secure victories. Voters are looking for genuine leadership, clear messaging, and bold action, not a checklist of surface-level diversity. Moves marketed as strategy.
Is the poll incorrect?
Yeah, the poll was wrong. So what?
What about the conversation that they had with Kamala Harris, where they edited the answers that she had?
60 Minutes has a sterling reputation for investigative journalism.
That's not investigative journalism if you change someone's answers. If you ask her a question and she comes with a rambling answer that doesn't make sense and you edit that out.
Suing media has the impact of intimidating media.
No, but it's not that. It's deceptive editing.
I don't know.
You give people a different perception of who this candidate is than reality. But that's not objective journalism. Would you agree with that?
I don't know that I agree with your analysis of it.
I think that's universally accepted that that's what they did.
Then the impact is clearly intimidation. He wants to defund public broadcasting. Why is that? Because they also would run critical stories of him.
They say things that are defamatory and factually incorrect. What other course does a person have other than a lawsuit?
I don't think that it is appropriate to be intimidating media.
Joe Rogan didn't hold back when he challenged Bernie Sanders over his claim that Donald Trump was intimidating the media by suing 60 Minutes for its editing of the Kamala Harris interview. You already know the story, so we won't rehash the details. But Rogan asked a much more important question, one Sanders sidestepped entirely. What if a major news outlet edited a Trump interview to make him appear more articulate, intelligent, and composed than he really was? Would Sanders just shake his head and send out a few tweets? Or would he support legal action, just like Trump did? The double standard is hard to ignore. When the media portrays Trump negatively, it's called journalism. But when someone pushes back, it's labeled intimidation. Sanders can't have it both ways. If he truly supports a free and fair press, then media accountability should apply across the board, regardless of the political target. Bill Maher's critique of Bernie Sanders wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a tough reality check for the Democratic Party. From political short-sightedness to performative rhetoric, Maher highlighted major flaws in the party's direction. Sanders, once a strong voice for working Americans, now seems more focused on aligning with fringe ideas than presenting practical solutions. His silence on anti-American symbolism, his use of semantic arguments, and his refusal to speak out against extreme positions reveal a lack of moral clarity and decisive leadership. Even when he raises valid points, like student loan reform, his message is often lost in layers of political messaging, with potential ticket pairings like AOC and Sanders being discussed for 2028, the risk of repeating past mistakes looms large. Maher's message is clear. Unless the left wakes up and faces reality, they won't just lose elections, they could lose public trust entirely. The time for wishful thinking is over, and that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.